Right, so I've got a few things to say about stuff. Well, health-wise, it's I've had some issues lately, and I've just been yeah. Anyway, so I've been doing some research into my coil designs, and I was coming up with an idea of a coil around the center core and with deflectors, and I was getting into this, and I was planning on making a 3D model on this, and then I saw some videos on YouTube. This other guy was working on some resonant coils. Now, I've done this sort of thing before with my MEG, motionless electromagnetic generator, using a high frequency RF. Now, if you remember, I had some issues with that because I couldn't get the cores. I couldn't get the speed, the resonant frequency high enough to make it effective and in generating power. Although I had some really interesting effects where at certain frequencies and under certain loading conditions, the actual input current went right down to a very low amount. I can't remember the exact numbers now. I think it was somewhere like 150 milliamps or something silly. But I was pumping in something like 1.6 milliseconds frequencies, and using my H-bridge circuit, and I kind of drew a blank with it at the end because I was looking for materials that would function at higher frequencies, and obviously the ability to find materials such as metal crystalline, iron crystal, well, met glass it's called, or electric foil. I was looking at ideas of increasing the frequency and the resonant frequency of this device to make it more effective at higher frequencies. Now, if I was able to get the frequencies higher, I'm sure it would be something along the lines of well, closer to a free energy solution anyway. But obviously I couldn't make that claim because we haven't got there yet. So I was working along those lines, and then I shelved my MEG while I was working on other things, my anti-drag generator. So I was making interesting progress with the anti-drag generator, but ultimately it still needs work. It still needs a lot of work on the coil arrangements, which is why I was working on a new coil arrangement, which was that. I also worked on another design, and none of these designs have been 3D modelled yet. So I was getting a bit disillusioned. I was getting a little bit fed up with it, because it seems to me that every time I build something, I am just a fraction away from getting something that's going to be feasible. And now, if I go back to my history years and years ago, when I used to work on RF radio frequencies, and it's often referred to as my printer's making noises. It was often referred to as, what's the word, radiant energy. Radiant energy is basically energy which is radiated outwards from a resonant circuit, and then the resonant frequency is usually in the RF spectrum. RF can be anything that's above a few kilohertz, really, or it can be even slightly lower than a kilohertz, but obviously it gets impractical at lower frequencies, because as the frequency becomes lower and lower, the actual wavelengths get larger and larger and larger. So with a resonance circuit that's practical, you need a high enough frequency to allow for a wavelength that is manageable and it's not too large. We're talking about a few feet. Now, if you know anything about CB radio, they work at 27 megahertz, and a full wave antenna for 27 megahertz is, don't quote me on this because I can't remember the exact dimensions, but we're talking about somewhere around 20-25 feet. It's big. But there are a lot of antennas for CB radio, for example, would use quarter wave, which is a fraction of a full-length waveform. You can use quarter wave or half wave or three-quarter wave. The only issue with that is you get these harmonics every so often. You get these third harmonics generated. Now, RF is a really interesting thing to work along if you understand it, and I do understand RF, and I know all about the standing wave ratio and about reflected power. Reflected power is when the actual power is not in perfect tune. So instead of the power going out and being radiated, it's reflected directly back down the wire into the circuit, and it causes what's basically an overload on the system. So you end up with a lot of back EMF coming down the wire instead of being radiated outwards, and that's very, very inefficient. So I kind of got distracted from my coil design, because I'm thinking, you know, it would be much more practical to work along that line, along the lines of radiant energy in a certain way, because a lot of people have shown some very, what's the word? Some very potential, some great potential. Now, so I'm going to be looking at that. I am going to look at the. I'm going to be looking at radiant systems, because I could use my MEG design, and instead of using core materials, what we do is use an array. An array, if you know anything about antenna theory, if you need to look at antenna theory, do a search on the internet to do with antenna theory. Now, antenna theory is when you have reflectors, and you have spaced out at certain wavelengths. Now, when you get the deflectors or reflectors spaced out properly, you can carry a waveform. I don't know how to show you that really, but excuse me. I'm dropping everything here. So helps to get the right pen. So I'll just draw something out for you a little bit, just to right. So a conventional antenna has a coil. Let me just put the cap on this thing, it doesn't dry out. Conventional antenna has a coil which is a tuned circuit, and that's usually just a piece of aluminium that's got connected to the wires at the back. And these little elements that are in front are all tuned. Now, normally when you're receiving a signal, you're not just receiving one frequency, you're receiving a multitude of frequencies. So these little bars that are in front of an antenna, they're all slightly different sizes. So the ones at the back might be larger, and the ones further forward might be smaller. And the reason for that is it makes it directional. It makes it so that when you point this end at the signal source, you actually have a directional beam. and it carries the waveforms, and basically what happens is you get a waveform and it travels along these beams, and then it's picked up by the coil at the back. Now, I've seen a lot of people on YouTube making these coils and spacing them out. That is basically, I'll try and put a link to this guy on YouTube. He's very good at. He doesn't seem to have a full understanding of what he's actually doing, but what he is actually doing is replicating an antenna system with coils, and you can do that. And you can have a multitude of coils. Now, when you have the coils instead of the little bars that I was just showing you, if you have a multitude of coils in a series with spaces in between each one, what often happens is the first coil will be, if you get it in tune, in the right position, and you're drawing power from that first coil, if you have it spaced properly, and the waveform will be inverted for the next coil, and then the next waveform will be inverted again for the next coil. So when you're actually drawing power from one coil, you're actually increasing power on the second coil because you're inverting the waveform. So what you end up doing is you're creating gain. You're actually amplifying the signal. You're actually amplifying the RF signal. And so imagine it like a bumpy road, right? You've got a hilly road, right? Imagine that you're in a car and you're driving along this bump, and when you're actually accelerating down the hill, you're actually pushing the next person up the hill on the other side, and you get to the bottom. Then as he's falling, he's pulling you up. So you get what's called I think it's a regenerative, I think the word is regenerative equilibrium. So you end up with a situation like, you know, like on them big wheels that you see at the fairground, right? You've got a lot of people on the right hand side of the wheel going down, and you've got a lot of people on the left hand side of the wheel that are going up. The reason those fairground rides work so well is because you have a balance. You have people going down on the wheel, and their weight is pulling the other guys up the wheel on the other side. So that is a bit of a crude analogy. I wouldn't say it's literally that, but it's a way of explaining how you can have a regenerative force in a RF situation, radio frequency situation of resonance, that will actually aid the power output. So the power output will actually stay high, and it won't put extra power on the load, the actual generating coil, resonant coil. So you end up with a system. You could have multitudes of these coils, but you have to have them spaced out at the ends of the waveform. So you have a waveform, and you have to tune the coils. You can't have the coil right in the middle of the waveform and one at the dip of the waveform. You have to have it set so that they work together in unison and they all help each other. That's part of the reason why antennas work when you're picking up a signal. So anyway, as I say, I might look into that myself. It's been a long time since I worked on any RF stuff, but it might be worth doing that to see if it would work well with my Meg generator using air core instead of any iron core. So we could use coils instead of aluminium reflectors. So that might be worth looking into at some point. And now the other thing I wanted to do was ask my friends on YouTube down London area. My daughter's just bought a boat. She needs somebody in the London area to help her sort out the wiring on the boat. Somebody that's off-grid, somebody that likes the off-grid lifestyle. The boat's got certification and all that, and it's all in good shape. So leave me a comment or something if you feel like you want to help out, because I'm over 250 miles away from my daughter, so it's very difficult, and because of my medical situation I can't really get down there. I might fall off the boat and drown or something. But anyway, her and a boyfriend, they're looking for somebody that can help them out, sort out the wiring. So they're willing to pay whoever it is that will come out. It's mainly fuse box stuff. It's just general boat knowledge. It's a cruiser. So anyway, I think it's Escaping the Matrix. He seems to be in that area. That I couldn't think of his name earlier, but he seems to be in that area. I think he's pretty close to that. But it's near the locks, the actual river locks. See, the trouble is I'm not from London area myself. My daughter isn't either. She only moved down there recently, so she doesn't really know anyone. She only knows a few people on the boat lock near her where she is. But anyway, that's the other thing I wanted to ask you, is if somebody wants to possibly help out there, and as I say, she was willing to pay them. So we'll have to negotiate all that stuff later if you contact me, well, because I don't know all the ins and outs of it. But anyway, I was just saying, I'm still alive. I'm just trying to work stuff out at this end to do with what I want to start tackling, because yeah, it's just, I was working on my coil design and I was thinking about 3D printing all that stuff, but then I'm thinking maybe I just need to look at this differently. Maybe I need to come at this from a different angle instead of using core material, which is in itself very expensive because you have to mess about with expensive ferrite materials and all that stuff. And I've got quite a bit of ferrite material, but I am currently working on a design, something to do with resonant RF systems, which I can use with my my motionless electromagnetic generator. So I'm looking at that right now, because I did think that I'll explain what I thought this would do. So the idea with this thing, his core, was that there would be a coil going down the middle, and that these we would have one pole in the center as on a rotor passing, and this say this middle pole was north, right? We would have a south pole magnet approaching, and this is like a ramp to the magnetic field. So as it's approaching, it would draw in, it would pull in that north field from the center, through the center core down this array. And at the same time, on the other side, there will be a south field as it's departing, drawing in the north field from the center core. And then as it would pass, we normally have a sticky point where it's the reluctance, where it doesn't want to let go. And my thoughts was that instead of having a drag point on here, as it crosses the threshold point, it would actually have deflection. So it would actually push it through to the next one, and so forth. So we'd have less of a sticky point. We would have more repulsion. So when you have the magnet, say the north field, pulling down on here, and the south is over here, and because it's a ramp, as it's moving away, it's the spacing is gradually increasing rather than it dragging back on it. It will be at a higher altitude away from the rotor magnet, and as it's moving, instead of having drag, we would have repulsion, so it would actually kick it out more. So that was my theory on this design, but yeah, it would be a long-winded process of making a whole bunch of these things, and even not knowing if it was going to work. So I kind of decided just to sit on that for now. I'm just working out stuff, but I really am interested in the RF idea of using resonance. I really want to look at that. I'll try and stick a video on the end of here on the end screen. I'll sort that out later on when this video is processed. And this guy has been doing it. It's basically based on the Tesla theory. I didn't want to go along that route, to be honest, with Tesla stuff, but he was a very clever guy. He was born way too early, I suppose. Alright, that's it for now. I just wanted to let you know how things are going and putting my little request out there. So if you know anything about boats, maybe you could reach out and let me know. There is an email address in my About section. You could email me on there. You could go to my YouTube channel and go to About, and there's an email address in there. You could email me from there. Alright, see you later. Bye.